In today's episode, I'll be giving my review and reaction to the 2016 film Arrival. So let's get right into Arrival. Do something, man. People are questioning you. Shut up. Shut up. Okay, yep, do that. Sure, guys. Stupid and dumb. Just an idiot. Get your shit together, son. Fuck it. I loved it. Welcome to the dub cast. Arrival was released on September 1st, 2016. The genre is a science fiction drama. The runtime was an hour and 56 minutes. The budget was $47 million. The director is Denis Villeneuve. I've seen some of his work. Prisoners, I've seen. Very good movie. Enemy, I've seen. Kind of mid on that one. It's probably his least favorite movie that I've seen so far. Dune and Dune Part 2, both pretty good. So, decently high expectations for Denis Villeneuve moving forward. I'll talk about it a little bit more, but like his work so far, so expected high things coming into this movie. And this movie stars Amy Adams, Jeremy Renner, Forrest Whitaker, Michael Stuhlbarg, and Z Ma. So, how I do my reviews, I'll do my overarching review, give a score, compare that score amongst the other scores, and then get into my thoughts and reactions throughout the film. So, diving in with my overall review, this is one of the best movies I've seen in the past couple of years. I just did the math on my own. I think this is top six, top seven on my list so far of movies I've seen just in general. This was outstanding. This movie hit super hard. Literally, I was typing my review. I had dried tears in my eyes. This movie brought me to tears at the end, and I can't remember the last movie that made me cry. Like, this was an insane movie, just so beautifully done. A truly beautiful story told with Inception level goosebumps happening. Like, it had all of my favorite aspects of a movie. I mean, I like to say Inception's my favorite movie of all time. I don't really know. I haven't really sat down and thought about it too hard, but you had Inception level stuff happening. You had other stuff. I forget what the other things were, but we'll get into it. Amy Adams killed it. Maybe the best performance by a female actress I've seen to this point. I mean, I'm probably over exaggerating just a little bit, but damn, that was a crazy movie. Brilliant job by Amy Adams. She really played that character really well. The music I thought was perfect with the eerie background sounds and setting the tone of the hetapods. At first they're aliens, they're supposed to be a little bit creepy, but they do end up just trying to help the human race. I was listening to the soundtrack last night, actually. Beautifully done. I need to go through it and add some of the songs to my playlist. That's what I like to do with my favorite movies. I mean, just really set the background really well. Kind of this eerie vibe of, aliens being on Earth, and you have to deal with that. I think the set pieces were amazing as well, giving this a very modern feel. I mean, this did come out over almost 10 years ago now, 2016. But in an actual crisis like this, if aliens were to come, like, this felt realistic. Like, this felt like something that could possibly happen, not just green guys come down and like talk to you and they're all weird and they know everything and everything. Like, this felt very really realistic, very grounded, very something that could actually happen. So I did appreciate that a lot as well. Like, this had some of my favorite aspects of some of my favorite movies as well. An even more compelling story, in my opinion, and they really get you at the end with that twist. Just such a tragic tale. I mean, it's a story so well done that you don't even like. I saw that coming a little bit, and then had no idea what was happening, and then by the end you're like, holy shit. I was fully captivated by this movie, and this is a masterpiece. Just every detail, you wonder why there are so many flashbacks, and then it all makes sense in the end. It's so sad just thinking of this story and how they break up, and the daughter will die. It's I don't even want to talk about it. It's sad. But that's what makes a movie good. If it makes you feel such strong emotions, in my opinion. I didn't catch up on any of the clues throughout the twist. It was just purely shocking at the end. I mean, I wasn't really looking for anything like that. Like, I guess I was kind of just observing the flashback scenes, whatever, whatever. And then when they hit you with that, it's like waterworks, man. Jeremy Renner, I thought did a great job as well in his supporting role. Just really brilliant directing from Denis Villeneuve. I hope this movie won every award. I know most of my movie reviews are not movies that have come out in the past year or so, so I don't do the research on if they won the awards, but I'm sure Amy Adams won at least a couple awards for this. Jeremy Renner, Denis Villeneuve. This movie deserves to win a couple of awards. Hopefully it did. The monsters and their language, I thought as well, was amazing too, and very realistic while being non-violent and also being complex. Like, it wasn't just an easy language to figure out. They spent a lot of time working on it and figuring out how to figure that out. And I thought that that was a really interesting aspect of them doing the circles and stuff with the little creatures or whatever they're called, our characters on the characters, is that the correct word, on the end. Like, I thought that was a really interesting concept of them being able to communicate through that way, through the glass, and Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner to being able to figure it out. I mean, Amy Adams also was just taking hella chances in this movie, trying to figure out what they were doing. I mean, she takes off the suit at the beginning, tries all these out of the box methods. Everyone's kind of like, "What are you doing?" But yeah, favorite scene obviously has to be when she goes forward, or when she goes forward in time and gets the clues from the Chinese general on she said to her, what she said to him that changed his mind, and then she does it in real time, calling him on the phone. That was obviously my favorite scene. I can't even think of a single negative thing to say about this movie. I'm landing it at a 9.6. 9.6 for Arrival. Very well done. Amazing movie. One of my favorite movies of all time, just off this first watch. So, where do you guys rank Arrival? Am I too high in it? A couple of people I've talked to have very high regards for it, but I know out there it's a wide scale. Movie ranking is subjective. So, let me know on your thoughts on Arrival down below in the comments. This, I think, cracked my top 7. Briefly looking at it today. One day I'll do an overall review of movies that I haven't even looked at on the Dubcast. But yeah, I think this was my favorite movie so far. I mean, it made me very emotional. It felt real. It felt impactful. It had everything I wanted from a movie. A good twist that you didn't see coming. I mean, you don't necessarily need one of those. Just a heartfelt story. I thought it was beautifully done and one of the best movies I've seen of all time. So let me know what you guys think down below. Now let's compare this movie amongst all of the movies reviewed so far on the Dubcast. So, of 44 movies, we're 44 movies in our 10 months together, and this is the number one movie, clearing everything up until this point. Deservedly so, in my opinion. Looking at everything else in the list, I think this is easily the best movie of them all. Would you guys take any of my other movies that I've reviewed so far over this movie? We look at the 9 category. You got Wind River, you got Django Unchained, Hateful Eight, Training Day, Dune Part 2. I mean, there's some good movies in there. Some stuff below that I was lower on that people are higher on. Apparently, I just watched a video and someone said Magnolia is their favorite movie of all time. Have fun with that, but that's not for me. I think Arrival is the best movie I've seen so far since the Dubcast began. So obviously this is the best sci-fi film, beating Looper, which is an 8.6, and 28 Days Later, which was a 7.5. So interesting fact here, both the movies that Jeremy Renner was in on my list are the 2 top movies reviewed so far, Wind River and Arrival. And this beats out the other Forest Whitaker movie on my list, Good Morning Vietnam, which was a 6.7. So Forest Whitaker, one of the lower movies, one of the higher movies as well. Now let's get into my thoughts and reactions throughout the film. So starting it out, we get the birth of her daughter. She's then playing with her, and then she has cancer and then dies. Well, I thought she had cancer or like a terminal disease. I haven't done the proper research on what happens, but I think there's a book, and they said in the book she is hiking and has an accident hiking, and that's what causes her to die. But it seemed like in the movie that wasn't really the case. Like, she kind of just had an illness, at least from what we saw. So maybe I'll have to do some. If there's a book out there, I should read that book. Damn. But it always sucks when you read the book after watching the movie. Like, I feel like but the book's always better than the movie, though. That's the problem. I think if you watch the book and then watch the movie, that's good, because you're like, oh, as you can see it played on screen, the movie's probably not gonna be as good. But then if you watch the movie and then read the book after, it's like, what's the point? I already know everything that's gonna happen. I don't know. Then maybe that's a weird thing, but I like seeing the movie version after watching the book, and then if it's the movie, I see the movie first. I'm not really interested in going back to reading the books. But yeah, so right off the bat, I'm like, what is happening here? I mean, this poor lady, her daughter, we see them grow up a little bit, play together, have fun, and then all of a sudden she's dead. I mean, I know that's life and it's unfortunate, but right off the bat, I mean, that's pretty sad. So she is a professor at school, Luis, at a college seemingly. So we get weird vibes. Something is happening, and she is in her class. There's only a couple people in her class. She gets out of class, and there's a bunch of people looking at a TV, and she doesn't even stop to see what's going on. Why wouldn't you stop? Maybe she got a phone alert. I mean, this is 2016 at this point. Everyone has iPhones, but why wouldn't you stop to see what's going on the TV if everyone's? I mean, maybe she's like a renegade and doesn't want to look because everyone else is looking. I mean, I've been there trying not to buy into the hype, but this could be something that's life changing, and it is because there's now 12 pods of aliens on Earth. Like that's an absurd thing to just walk by the TV and not look. I mean, I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. Anyways, the alarm bells ring and class is dismissed. So this is serious. I mean, this is like the only thing I can compare it to is COVID, but COVID was like not really like this because the information kind of came out slow. But I think if something like this were to happen, this would be a pretty realistic scenario on how things would play out. So next day, she still goes back to school after class got dismissed, and there's not a single soul in the school. I don't know why she expected people to be there. I guess with, the unfortunate situation around her daughter and her eventual husband leaving her, like she didn't have much to look forward to. Maybe just going to school was like her fun. I mean, for a lot of people, work is fun. So I was critical of her decisions early on in this movie. Why go to work if no one's going to be there? I mean, there's a national crisis with the aliens. So she's in her office, nobody's in the whole place, and she gets approached by an important man. This ends up being Forrest Whitaker's character, who's kind of just a liaison essentially throughout the movie of in between her and the military. So he is coming to her to ask her about translating aliens communicating. And she isn't really able to help at all, so they leave her there. But she says, if you can get this guy to say this other word, what the correct interpretation is, then come back to me. If you can say it correctly, then you got your guy. Because they threatened to leave, and they're like, well, if you don't want to come, we're gonna go get another guy. And they do come back after she gets the other guy with the wrong interpretation of the word. I'm forgetting exactly what the word was. Maybe it was something important that mattered, but I don't know. That was kind of just like a go find your guy if you want to, but he is not going to be able to do his job like I am. So I guess she is a communications professor. Um, I think there is a little bit of one of her lectures in class, but yeah, I mean, if you have the chance to save the world, you better go. So she does. Louise does go, and she's picked up by a helicopter in the middle of the night after they decide that the interpretation of that guy's word was wrong. They come back and get her in the middle of the night, and then she's ready, just like ready to go. Gets in the helicopter, and there she meets Ian. Ian is played by Jeremy Renner. So they meet in the helicopter. They have two different ideas on how to approach the aliens. Not really like drastically different, but you can see that this is going to be a little bit of a back and forth situation where one of them may have a good idea here, one of them may have a good idea there. Essentially, they are going to end up working together pretty well, but right off the bat, it seems a little bit rocky. But once they're kind of thrust into the gravity of the situation, then they're able to work together a little bit better. So as soon as they land at the camp right outside of the pod, so you have the pod, which is a really kind of interesting looking half circle almost. It's just like a bean pod basically. So they're thrust right into right into the situation. They got to be briefed on everything, sign away stuff, take some stuff from the doctor, get medically checked in, and then they're thrust right up into it. So it's a weird way how this pod works. So you can go in there and go up a certain level, and then you have to stop, and you can see them through the wall. So I would like to look at like a graphic of how that pod actually worked, because I was really a little bit confused on that, because they go up like one of those things. A truck has the thing on it, and it pushes you extended all the way up, so they go up in there, but that's where they stop, and then they'll have a certain amount of time in there before they get kicked out and they lose gravity. Well, they lose gravity anyways once they go up there. So as they go up, they slowly lose gravity, and then I think they lose oxygen or something when the time runs out. So super eerie music right away. This is our soundtrack for the whole movie. Gives it a good decent vibe when you're like, what are these aliens gonna be? Who knows? Blah blah blah. So they're walking up, and essentially they do end up meeting the actual aliens. They do look a little creepy, despite not getting a full look at them. Obviously, with the soundtrack playing, it's a little scary. They're kind of like almost octopuses with octopuses with just like a massive head that's like kind of skinny. I mean, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. With their little tendrils, and so they don't get a full look at them. And now Louise is trying her methods of how to talk to them. How to communicate with them. So she brings a visual aid with her, and she says that she's human. I don't know what the initial thought here was, because I mean, it's how would you communicate with them? People always say that aliens have been watching us for years. Okay, then how would they like? Would they? Aliens are among us. Fucking secret invasion. No. It's hard to communicate with an alien, so I don't even know how you start. I mean, how do you communicate with someone? Imagine talking to someone in Spanish and you don't know any words in Spanish, and you don't have Google Translate to help you, and you've never learned Spanish. It's like, I mean, I think it'd be through objects. You could do stuff through objects, and pointing and stuff. But if an alien doesn't even know what pointing means or what objects are, then it's like, how would you even start that conversation? So Luis has chose a visual aid. She says that she's human, and they turn it first, and then they ink out a circle, then other images. So it's a little bit like, what's going on here, because you don't know what their method of communication is. Seeing the ink, um, you're like, okay, this is how they're communicating to people, or trying to communicate to outside of the species. Um, so I wonder if they understood what Luis was saying at the beginning, because we come to find out later on that they're from the future, etc., etc. But I wonder if the whole time they were actually communicating with Luis correctly, and like it just took Luis and Ian to figure it out on the human side, but the alien side always knew, the hetapods always knew what the humans were saying. I guess that'd be interesting to watch on like a rewatch if we, well, not really, because they would probably say that if it happened. I don't know. Anyways, so that's the initial attempt. She says she's human. They turn away, then they ink out a message. So instead of saying I'm a human and using that kind of basic info, she's now going to use other terms now. She starts with her name. So she says, my name is Luis. And then that may confuse them. I mean, it's really, it depends on how intelligent the aliens are, because if they know if they know anything, then like nothing matters, because it's like they know automatically what you're saying. But what would her saying I'm Luis do? I guess I don't know. Well, because they do name the hetapods too, so I think we're just supposed to assume that these aliens are pretty well versed and understanding. So she states her names. Then, to better ingratiate herself with them, she takes off her suit and goes hand to hand with them. She puts her hand up against the glass, and they put their tendril against the glass. So I think that that's, I keep saying glass, but it's like some sort of wall maybe. I think that was an important moment, because you need to communicate through something. Touch could be really good. I mean, obviously, this ends up helping Luis a lot out in the end and gives her basically a superpower. Um, but I mean, right off the bat, this first touch helps explain a little bit, and then they ink out what is their names potentially. Obviously, it will take them a long time to decipher this. They don't even know what any of the ink means yet, but that's a good start if you're on a name-to-name basis. What I was saying before about what would you say to somebody if you in Spanish, they just probably like point to yourself and say that would be the first thing you say is your name. So we're off to a good start here. Luis and Ian definitely have a very good approach on talking to these people. Like, they brought in the right people for sure. So as time goes on, they're slowly making breakthroughs on communication. Obviously, the hetapods don't write and speak the same. Their writing is very complex, which, yeah, they have. It's just a circle, and there's like these little different signals on the ends of the circle that determine what they're actually trying to say. So I don't know how you even go about determining that. I mean, they looked for patterns and stuff, but it's hard to, like, if they can't nod their head yet, like without movements, it's hard to understand what's what. So these people, obviously Ian and Luis, are freaking smart as hell, because this would be like, I wouldn't even be able to do this at all. I'm not sure who even would be able to do this at all. I mean, you'd have to be very well versed in communication. So essentially, as people are in the world, people start getting really upset on the outside of the camp. They think no progress is being made, even though the hetapods haven't done anything to anyone. They just have sat in their petapod in freaking Montana, and the same ones, the rest of the 11 ones, have done the same exact thing in different countries around the world. Of course, people are upset because, God forbid, something happens and no one knows the correct answer by a month. Like, I think it's like a month past. But also very realistic if something like this happened. Imagine if this happened in 2025. politically in the U.S., it'd be ridiculous. So they're upset. The military on the site are listening to radios. You have people on YouTube saying we need to attack the aliens before they attack us. It's like, and the people on the military people are actually like, this is something I never even thought of, and it makes a lot of sense. But people in the military listen to these commentary shows too, and so of course they're going to be able to act on it, which is stupid. Because I'm not going to say what I'm about to say, but yeah, they're influenced by this because they're going to do something later on. This is something to keep an eye on for later on, the military people, because they're starting to get a little bit pissed off with the progress too. But there's no like rush. It's not like they're attacking or any, like, I guess you could assume that the hetapods will be able to destroy the Earth if they want to, but it's like have the benefit of the or have like the benefit of the doubt. Be positive, be optimist. I know a lot of people aren't optimists. Whatever. But that's an important note to watch moving forward. So, in my opinion, Louise, once progress is being made, she starts to lose a little bit. She keeps getting flashbacks to her kid. Now, maybe looking back on this, maybe that was just me clowning because we know that she can see through the future. So, maybe she's starting to slowly get glimpses of the future or the past. Wait, my mind's bending right now. Because they have the kid. She has the kid after. So, oh, but it's like, okay, I got it. Narratively, she's telling the story the whole time. So her telling the story at the beginning, it's all good. Okay, so maybe in this scene, this is when she actually starts to see the future with her kid, because she does have a lot of flashbacks or a lot of flash forwards, I should say, with her kid. As time goes on, she starts to learn more about everything. So instead of actually losing a little bit, she's actually just gaining her superpower, which will be able to see into the future. And she's getting flash forwards to her kid. So basically just the opposite of what I wrote. She's actually starting to become really smart and getting flash forwards to her kid. And then she sees one of the pods right in front of her. It's a weird scene because you are like, oh, she's losing it. She's having dreams. She's having nightmares. What's going on here? But maybe since that first touch, she's now, seeing in the future in that current time period, because she's also narrating the story from a fourth wall. So it is a little bit hard to break down, but it's not like rocket science. It's like a good movie that you can actually understand. Anyways, not to be too mean, Tenet. Anyways, China is talking to the aliens as well, and they're talking through games. So they're playing games back and forth. And this draws alarm bells for Luis and Ian because in a game there's a winner and a loser. So I agree that's a really bad method of ways to do things. Like imagine you just met somebody and you were like, let's play chess, and that's how we're going to communicate. That doesn't make any sense. I don't know what the Chinese were really thinking in this movie. It seems like they kind of just put the Chinese in that role of being like the aggressor and being the ones who would not trust aliens at all. I mean, and that'd be super realistic. I'm not even sure the U.S. at this point would trust aliens. It'd be like send in a Luis and Ian or give them any time at all. Like they might just start blowing that shit up. I mean, am I wrong? I don't know. So I'm surprised more countries weren't doing that. They do have, I should mention it, they do have like a united grid where the guy who's a step over Forrest Whitaker's character is like in constant communication with the other 11 countries around the world, the pods. So that's something that plays into later in the movie where, at first they're all on this united front. It's the world, like the human race. Everyone's trying to figure it out, but then eventually like people start dropping the comms. China, Russia, I forget what the other country is in there as well. Maybe Turkey or something like that. But it's like even when there's a potentially world-beating problem of aliens on Earth, even then people are dropping out of the communications, don't help. I think this is totally realistic. I mean, if there was an apocalypse, everyone would just be thinking for themselves. No, this isn't like technically an apocalypse, but if there was an alien invasion, people would just be thinking for themselves. No one would be trying to communicate with other countries and help each other. It's just like, it's sad. It's sad but true. So anyways, more complications are had. So China and Russia go offline, and once they go offline, everyone else is like, fuck it, why are we on here too? Which, like, even if you're the US, like, you have allies in Europe, you have Canada, Mexico. I'm not sure if there was the one there, but like we're friendly with South America. Why would you go offline? Like, might as well keep trying to figure stuff out. I mean, you have 12 different countries, the best people and the best communicators in 12 different countries. I mean, you have China's doing games with them, Russia's doing other like stuff. Everyone's trying different stuff and experimenting. You might as well share the research. But it's like it's like the atom bomb. It's that's a bad comparison, kind of. But the atom bomb, everyone, if they worked together, they would have figured out instantly. But they were in a war, so they couldn't work together, and we had to beat the other one. So it's almost kind of like the atom bomb, just in a different way, because China is trying to figure out their way to deal with it and not tell the U.S. because they're not communicating with them. So now the whole communication grid is offline, and China apparently heard them in one of their games say the word weapon, and this brings up a good debate because you don't understand the interpretation of each word. Like weapon could mean something totally different to the hetapods than it means to humans. Like, and their language is so complex that they probably don't even speak in sentences. Like, I feel like a lot of assumptions were made by the people in charge in these operations that it was just gonna be some like, okay, break down what they're saying, and then we're gonna have like a conversation with them. Like, this takes time. You got to figure out how they're talking, what their dialect is. Like, do they use verbs? Do they use nouns? Do they use adjectives? It's not like everyone's just gonna have a simple like one-on-one conversation after a month or so. Like, I say give them all the time in the world. These until they start doing something. Like, they were just sitting there chilling. They were trying to actually help the human race, God forbid. But people are gonna people. So yeah, now that they said weapon, everyone's starting to worry. China is starting to mount an attack to launch everything they have at their hedapod. Theirs is in the middle of the ocean. So they go back in, just Ian and Luis. Like, things are starting to get really dire because that guy I mentioned before, Forrest Whitaker, is superior. He's starting to panic. Like, the whole military base is starting to panic. What's going to happen? So Luis and Ian go back in and say they need the technology now because the hetapods have been mentioning that they need to give them a technology. That's what they want to do. That's why the whole reason why they're here, so they can help them in the future. So the pod bangs on the wall, and she puts her hand up, Luis, and has memories of her kid, and then draws something. So I was thrown off in this or thrown off taking my notes because I'm using the wrong verb. She's seeing the future with her kid. She's not seeing the past, because that version of her that we're following in the story didn't even think of having a kid yet. So she's having flash forwards of her kid, who draws something and then she draws something to communicate with the pod. And while they're up there, they hear gunshots, and then everything is blasted out of the room. And while they're up there, the military launched an attack after watching this mirror campaign. So that was the flashback to what I said earlier. Keep an eye on this, because all those guys listening to that political show on YouTube channel said fuck the order, or maybe the order was given, but they just started shooting at the hedapod for no reason. It's so stupid. Like, why would you shoot it after it does? They're doing nothing, man. They're trying to help us with technology, and they're not even leaving or doing anything different or wrong. I don't get it. But, once you're in a situation you think nothing's going to change, I mean, people take action, man. People take action. So the pod, after being attacked, essentially gets up off the ground, is now in midair. China is preparing to blow up their pod. They have military ships, nuclear warheads coming. Like, they have the whole 9 yards. Everything's ready to go, basically. And so this is it. Like, Luis has got to do something. Ian's got to do something. Someone's got to figure it out, or else this whole situation is going to go, because they also realized that all the pods are talking to each other. So if one of them knows something, then the other one could just attack instantly. Like, the whole fate of the human race is basically on their hands to figure out a communication here, because one nation decided they're going to go about it, and they have their allies Turkey and sorry if it's not Turkey, or maybe it was Syria, one of those two. Maybe it wasn't one of those two, but the other country that's aligned with Russia and China, they're going to blow up their pods, and everyone else is going to have to pay the price for it, which is stupid, but nonetheless. Anyways, so Ian figures out something about being 1/12. This is where they realize that the link was between all the hetapods, and Russia is executing one of their own people in order to keep secrets. So that just goes to show you even more that really they didn't have the best interest of everyone in this operation because, one guy's trying to tell them what's going on with their pod. They don't know what's happening in Russia, and Russia doesn't know what happens in the U.S. This guy goes and tells a secret. Boom, you're dead. I mean, that makes a lot of sense for Russia and what we've known Russia to be, that they would kill one of their own to keep their own secrets. They're very protective of their own secrets. I mean, I'm not judging them. It's just when you're trying to figure out a global operation to help get rid of aliens that are just going to affect the whole human race, maybe just lay off a little bit. But this is fictional Russia as well. So maybe they use some of Russians' stereotypes to maybe do this, because I don't think Russians kill their own people. Maybe they do. I don't know. Anyways, now we're in emergency alert 0,000,000,000. Like, this is really bad. So Luis summons down a vestibule to go and talk to them. So I think she's done enough good building and communication with them in order to get this vestibule. And she's had visions since touching the wall of the future, which she doesn't know is the future. So she ascends to talk to them in their realm, and they let her in. I mean, this is good on her, because I don't think a lot of other nations would even be allowed anyone to come and do this. But Ian and Luis have such a good relationship with them that they do send down the vestibule to her and are ready to talk to him. So they have Costello and Abbott are the two pods slash octopuses slash aliens that they've been talking to, and they now say Abbott is in death process, which is unfortunate. I mean, rotting on Earth for 3 months. That's why they have to stay in the pod, because they didn't have the proper resources to go out and live amongst the Earth. They're not even here to live on the Earth. They're here to tell them the message, give them the technology, and dip, because they need that help in the future. So poor Abbott, free Abbott, she's in the death process, or they're the death process. It's an alien, it doesn't have a fucking gender. Anyways, Costello tells Luis that she has a weapon and she needs to use it, and they're here to help humanity. They need Earth's help in 3,000 years, and then Luis sees everything in the future, and the weapon opens time, so that time is not linear for the hetapods, and they have figured out a way to give it to the humans, that the humans will be able to help the hetapods in 3,000 years, and they'll be able to kind of open time for the humans, so they can see in the future and help them in the future. That was my kind of understanding of that part. So once Luis has this power, she keeps flashing forward to her daughter, and she now opens a book to translate the Hetapod language. We see that in the future, her teaching a class. She's made a book about it on how to understand Hetapod language, all the different caricatures and whatever on how to decipher that language. She's then teaching it to a class. Time is non-linear for the Hetapods. She imagines her meeting General Shang, and she gave him so this is the Inception level scene that I thought was so beautifully done that I couldn't even imagine happening at the beginning of this movie, or mostly throughout the whole movie. So Shang gives her his personal number, but this is after the fact, at like an award ceremony or a world conference where they've come together to talk about the Hetapods and their success on figuring out the situation. So at this award ceremony, she's able to ask him what his private number was, and he might just say, I forget how exactly it goes, but using this information, she's able to now have his private number in the present time, which is used to stop China from attacking the Hetapod, because if they attack, then everything's over, because the Hetapods will just unleash fury. So she takes a phone. Meanwhile, the whole U.S. Hetapod training people, or military people, camp around there, are planning to evacuate. Like, everyone's got to get out, but there's one phone being used. It's Luis with the private number to General Shang. So she now calls him from the present and tells him his wife's dying words, and she doesn't even know what the dying words are, but she's able to flash forward to the future, and he tells her the dying words at the conference. So now she uses the future to go back to the present to call and be like, listen, your wife's dying words were this, like, you have to answer my phone, private number, US. Like, I'm surprised he even picked up the phone from the US, but I mean, he probably was just so shocked that someone had his private number. And yeah, this scene gave me goosebumps. This is my favorite scene in the movie. I mean, it's just a crazy sequence of what happens, and Luis saves the day because General Shang immediately calls off the attack, and everything's all good. I mean, we see in the future Luis will learn how to communicate with the heptapods. She'll learn how to talk to them. Um, so the situation has been avoided. So happy ending, right? Everything's good. No. So after all this is done, she is now going to talk to Ian. The heptapods have disappeared, and her and Ian get a little bit close. I mean, pressure makes diamonds, right? Being in this situation where they both were held to a high standard and had to figure out how to stop this world conflict on their own in their own little heptapod, without communication with other nations. I mean, Louise just did that shit all by herself, essentially. Well, Ian helped a little bit, but now with that playing out, she can see into the future. So you are wondering what's with her daughter then, what's this whole situation. So you learn that the daughter, with the drawing we saw, the daughter had early on was actually a drawing of her and Ian with the heptapods. I mean, you couldn't even see this stuff coming. Like, you saw it because when you see the picture again, you're like, holy shit, that's the picture from before. It all starts to make sense now. The daughter was talking to Luis about how, why doesn't daddy looks at me different now. It's because she has a disease and she knew, and maybe, or maybe a choice he couldn't make or something. That's what he said, or that's what she said. So maybe in the future she tells Ian about how she can see the future. And then that's what makes him like look at his daughter are different, because he knows she's gonna die. I mean, it's pretty. I mean, if everyone knew when they were gonna die, I think that would be cause a lot of hectic for people and cause a lot of life and whatever. Life to be different. Sorry, I'm just, my mind's spinning now even further because I didn't realize, I just put that together in my own head in this now. So while everything's gone, the heptapods are gone now, everything's starting to make sense, but I'm almost gonna cry now. Like, I'm emotional talking about this. She's with Ian now, and Ian's like, let's have a baby, and you can see her like thinking about it in her own head, and she decides to go through it anyway, which I think is the right choice. I mean, you have to let life happen, and pain is part of life. That'll be my next review as well. That'll be a strong theme, but she decides to go through with it and have the baby anyway, knowing that it's gonna end up dying in the end and only making it a couple of years. Like, it's so sad. I was in Waterworks, and that's how the movie ends. She has Hannah with Ian. You know, Ian's gonna leave because he's upset about everything that plays out. It's so sad. It really. I mean, it got me bad. And I'm almost crying now talking about it. So yeah, that's how Arrival ends. Just can't give it enough props. Like, what a brilliant movie. Such a sad story. I mean, you got to think that life is always worth it to have, even if it's only for a couple of years. You can, make them the best. And I agree with the overall theme of the story. I mean, that just transcends even the alien stuff. I think that's like a moral theme of the story. Yeah, I think you gotta go through with it. I mean, you can't change things around. We've seen that in other movies and stuff. You can't change things around if you're trying to just avoid pain. Like, pain and suffering and hardships are part of life. You gotta deal with them. So just brilliant story. I mean, makes your mind think. I was thinking about this movie for a couple. I'm still intermittently thinking about this movie even a couple of days after sitting on it. Like, this is just so well done. I think that's what makes a good movie, is if you're able to. It makes you feel stuff after the movie. I mean, I'm in tears. I'm thinking about stuff. I had to look up stuff on Reddit and stuff. I mean, this was brilliant. This was a great movie. So, number one on the Dovecast so far. We'll see if it is replaced at any point in time. That being said, what did you guys think of Arrival? Am I overreacting to the moon? What would you guys rate it? I mean, this is top 10 for sure, top 7 I think. So that's an Arrival. I mean, feel free to leave your comments below. We can have a debate about it, but really, in my mind, there's nothing even close on this list to Arrival. I think it's a step above the best movie I've seen in the past 3 years. Brilliant. Yeah, so that's Arrival. Now, on to future casts. Putting this video out a week after I'm filming it. So last week we had UFC. Hopefully brought my friend along, and we had another chat about UFC 312. But the day this is coming out, UFC 312 happens later that night. So get your bets in now. Go listen to that. Super Bowl predictions. One last stream, NFL stream. Mikey, hopefully Cam came too, but maybe not. It's hard to speak in the future when you don't have guests who are consistent. But well, either way, there was a stream, and we did talk about the Super Bowl and the conference championships and off-season stuff. So feel free to check that one out as well. More stuff coming on the way. With the Super Bowl being over, shows are back. Gonna try and catch up on some stuff. Just keep checking the feed. I'll have different stuff out. I mean, I have a lot of shows to get to on my list. I know everyone's talking about Severance, but I'm just lazy and I don't feel like catching up on that in current time. So we'll be catching up on other stuff in the meantime, and then we'll be live for White Lotus, live for Daredevil, live for Survivor. More shows coming in later on too. Until Dawn, not Until Dawn. Until Dawn movie. I'm gonna go see that, but that's in a while. What's this? Last of Us. Last of Us season 2 at some point as well. You season 5, the last season of You, will be there for that. So stay tuned for more media content, movie reviews as well. Still looking at like 60 movies on my list, and then I have an additional list to add more movies once the movie list is over. It's crazy. It's crazy. So nonetheless, there will be content as always. So appreciate you checking out this video. Feel free to subscribe, feel free to comment, feel free to dislike, feel free to like. I know some of you guys don't like my review sometimes. It's all good. I wish you would comment though. Let me know what you disagree with, so we can have a dialogue. It can be respectful. We can have a nice dialogue. So yeah, as always, be easy.